Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. It is a great pleasure today for the Graduate School of Public and International Affairs and for CIPS, the Center for International Policy Studies, to welcome Professor David Menashri. My name is Costanza Musu. I am a professor at the Graduate School of Public and International Affairs. And so Professor Menashri has accepted to come and speak to us. He's only here for a couple of days. As you might know, he's a professor of Middle Eastern and African history at Tel Aviv University, and he currently serves as the head of the Department of Middle Eastern and African History. He's senior research fellow at the Moshe Dayan Center for Middle Eastern and African Studies, and he's been a visiting Fulbright scholar at Princeton University and Cornell universities. So his expertise is very vast, and there are many topics that he could cover, but certainly today he's going to cover a topic of great relevance and of great political interest for all of us. He will talk about Iran, the Middle East, and the US, a view from Israel, and I would like to ask you to join me in welcoming him today. We have until 1:30.
Okay. We left time for questions.
Yes.
Okay, you're done?
I'm done.
Other nice things to say about me? It's okay. We are two comments before I begin. One is about my introduction. I don't care how I'm being introduced, but what happens these days, people go to the internet and they find something about you, and it's everything is okay, but I was the head of the department 15 years ago. So I'm not anymore the head of the Department of Middle Eastern Studies. I don't want... No, that's okay. That's okay.
Maybe you still are, you didn't know.
They don't know, because they do the same thing.
There's been a reappointment.
No, that's okay. No, it's too late for me. It's too late. The head of department is not a position that you want to revisit. The second comment is to draw your attention to the title of my talk. It says, "A View from Israel." It's not the view of Israel, okay? Just let's make sure that you understand. I am a private citizen and old professor. I usually speak what I think it's the right thing, or what I believe that at that time that it's the right thing to say, and it's not doesn't have to commit the Israeli government. I cannot speak on their behalf. I don't know if they want me to speak on their behalf. This is the Canadian way. Usually in America they say buy one, get one free, and here they want to speak about Iran, the Middle East, and the United States, a view from Israel. Basically it's four basic issues, but I will, with your permission, focus more on Iran, domestic, and things going on in Iran, because what I sense that traveling in the world and seeing what is being said about Iran and written about Iran, mainly in the media, is that there is not sufficient understanding of the dynamics that move the Iranian politics. And it has been said, it's a cliche that all politics is domestic. It is domestic. You cannot understand the policy of Iran vis-a-vis different issues, Hizballah, Hamas, Syria, nuclear issues, foreign relations, if you don't understand who is the boss in Iran, what is their ideology, what are the aims and the goals, and which are the factors and groupings that make up the Iranian body of politics. I want to begin, therefore, with few comments about Iran, since I believe that the lack of sufficient understanding is obvious from whatever you read about Iran differently. Because usually I think what you read about Iran is either totally black or totally white. It seems like there is one Iran, one face, one attitude, one policy, and this is Iran. When you speak about Islam, you're same thing. This is the Islamic. Everything is Islamic. Islamic Republic, Islamic Revolution, Islamic terrorism. So Islam has one face. Iran has one face. That cannot be true in anywhere in the world. there are different faces to the Iranian government, of the Iranian civil society. And this picture is much more complex than naming Iran in one word as fanatic, fundamentalist, conservative, radicals, or other groups, reformists, pragmatics, and so on and so forth. There are different attitudes, different views in Iran. But there is one, I think, basic question that it should be understood, is that what was the essence of this revolution? What moved people in 1979 to go to the streets and topple the strong monarchy led by the Shah and bring about what happened to be Islamic Revolution? I happen to think that what moved Iranians was the search for hope, for a better future. I don't think that necessarily they wish to go to rule of the Ayatollahs. I happened to live in Tehran for 2 years at the end of the Shah's rule, doing research at Tehran University. I know it's being recorded, so I don't mind even saying, had I been Iranian citizen in 1979, I might have been with Ayatollah Khomeini. Because what was the whole movement about? The whole movement was the struggle, the continued struggle of the Iranian people for two major issues: social justice and political justice. Let me narrow it down further for you. The struggle in Iran in the last 130 years, including today, is for bread and freedom. That's what Iranians were looking for. Health services, education services, housing, all things that people in the modern world are looking for themselves, or at least for their children. I think it's important to understand, because not only in Iran, I think if you look at Al-Tahrir Square in Cairo exactly 2 years ago, what moved people to the streets to topple Mubarak, the aim of the revolutionary or the movement was not to bring about the Muslim brethren to power, nor to have Morsi as new president of Egypt. If this interpretation is accurate, the stability of the Islamic regime cannot depend on the degree of return to Islam, but rather to a degree that this regime would be capable of implementing the wishes of the people of Iran then and now. And if I ask myself to what degree this revolution accomplished or advanced the goals of the common Iranian people, I would tell you bluntly, I think it's a revolution of unfulfilled expectations. For a very basic reason, that if the name of the game was welfare and freedom, bread and liberties, there is no greater freedom today in Iran that used to be under the Shah. And I don't need anyone to tell me that the Shah was not a democrat. I learned to appreciate democracy only when I went to Iran and lived 2 years in a non-democratic system. Only when you live in non-democratic system, maybe some of you have the experience, then you understand to cherish democracy. And that's my message to the young people sitting here. Don't take democracy for granted. It's the most precious thing that we have in life. So I know that the Shah was not a democrat. But is there democracy today in Iran? Well, I tell you what is the difference. Under the Shah, to speak against him was a crime. Today, to speak against the Ayatollahs is a sin. I don't know which one of them is better. Is there better welfare for the underprivileged, they call the Mustazafin, the low strata people of Iran? I don't think so. It's good for the rich, still. It used to be and still is good for the rich people who can afford it. It's not good for the people who don't have the means. So if I look at this revolution as a movement that aimed to elevate the common people and bring them hope for brighter future, and this was the power of Ayatollah Khomeini, that he came with a promise that will, I almost said, he will take them to the promised land. I hope not to Jerusalem, but it's to fulfilling their expectations. And I think this is the basic point, both as a root of the revolution and if you look at the future of this revolution cannot be stabilized as long as the goals, the aims of the people are not being addressed successfully, at least partially. And there is no better welfare today to the young people of Iran that used to be under the Shah. With all the money coming out from oil, hundreds of millions of dollars under the presidency of Ahmadinejad. And where is the money? 3 years ago, when the young people of Iran went to the streets, their slogan was, "Where is my vote?" Unfortunately, in the Middle East, you cannot win a revolution only with the slogans of democracy. At that time, I offered a friend of mine in Iran another slogan. I didn't even ask royalties. Where is my oil money? Only when you have this social issue together with the political, when it comes to bread and wealth and freedom go together. Where is my vote comes with where is my oil money? You can recruit the millions of people. Again, look at Egypt, look at Libya, Tunisia, and other movements in the Middle East, what is called the Arab Spring. They are based on two pillars, social justice and political justice. The other point that I would say that this movement is not monolithic. The movement of the Islamic Revolution, there are different groupings and different ideas, different philosophies. How can I make it clear to you? Maybe the easiest way is to tell you that when Ayatollah Khomeini came back to Iran victorious in January 1979, and 2 million people, it's big number in Tehran of that time, demonstrating, welcoming him in the streets. There have been 7 grand ayatollahs in Iran, 7 top Iranian ayatollahs. In Iran, it's like they have assistant professors, assistant ayatollah, associate ayatollah, ayatollah, and grand ayatollah. This is the highest ranking, the grand ayatollahs. Never more than 10 in one generation. None of the other ayatollahs supported Ayatollah Khomeini. The number one ayatollah in Iran at that time was forced under house arrest until he passed away 7 years later. The man that Khomeini picked up to be his successor, calling him the fruit of my life, was removed from grace under Khomeini himself and was put under house arrest until he passed away 4 years ago. Look at the presidents of Iran. People speak about the presidents. Iran is going to have a presidential elections in June. What happened to the presidents? Now, I didn't think about it, but let me count them. The first, Bani Sadr, was impeached and was forced out of the country, living in Paris even now. The second was assassinated. The third is Khamenei, is still in power, or he is the power. The fourth is Rafsanjani, the strong man of Tehran, that recently 2 of his children have been in jail, and I think one of the daughter is still in jail. Then you have Khatami, who escaped house arrest, although he belonged to the reform movement, while Mousavi and Karoubi are under house arrest. He was, they allowed him to move more or less free, just because he has been president for 8 years. And now you have Ahmadinejad, and you can see the changing of attitudes. 4 years ago, less than 4 years ago, when Ahmadinejad was elected president in an election that have not been free, Khamenei praised him as a leading force in the genuine historical change of Islamic Revolution. A year after, he was against him. And now the enemy number one of Ahmadinejad is Khamenei, and vice versa. So we can see that there are different, in the theocracy, among the clerics, and in the political groupings, there are differences of attitudes. And then there is a huge divide between the people what I said, at least the civil society, and the leadership, the political system. There is a difference between the groups that, for the convenience of talk, we can call one of them radicals, extremists, fundamentalists on the one hand, and pragmatic, reformists, even liberals on the other hand. For 8 years, Iran was under the presidency of Khatami. That was relatively free. There was some freedom in Iran. I can give you, and I think that we look at the activities of civil society and the people of Iran. The Iranians can be proud. They have a wonderful young people. 60 years ago, there was not a single girl in any Iranian universities. Today, 60% of the students are female. This is an irreversible process. This is a sign of change for the better, I would say. The film industry in Iran is the best in the Muslim world. Women organizations in Iran are the most active in the Middle East, including in Israel. I wish we had such good women organizations in Iran, in Israel. Newspapers published under Khatami were interesting to read. I was reading the Persian newspapers and Arabic newspaper. I must tell you, the huge difference. The Iranian press was much richer, deeper. Well, I spoke like this a few years ago in Tel Aviv. I was in Jerusalem, and one of our officials told me how you can speak about even relative freedom of expression when 100 liberal newspapers were shut down in 5 years. I told him this is the answer. If you close 100 liberal newspapers, it means that they did exist. Where is another country in the Middle East that has 100 liberal newspapers to shut them down? So it depends which half of the glass you look. No, don't think it's a wonderful place to live in. Don't go and buy tickets. Wait until the other part will come. But I said that it's refreshing to see such impulses of free expression. A book published in Tehran was by the name, and all by revolutionaries, all by supporters of Khomeini. Abdi was one of the students who occupied the American embassy in 1979. And he wrote a book 10 years ago with the title, The Fascist Interpretation of Islam, blaming the Islamic regime under Khamenei to be fascist. Well, of course he went to jail. You can't write such a book and not visit the jail. But it's still, the very fact that it was published in 10 editions in Tehran is meaningful. I spoke with a friend of mine from one of the Iranian universities about this rather dichotomy between suppression that we see often in Iran and free expression. And I think he resolved my dilemmas by the following answer that he gave. He said, David, they tell you there is no freedom of expression in Iran. That's not true. We have freedom of expression. What we don't have is freedom after expression. But if you look at it, it's deeper than it sounds. They go out to the streets and they come and they demonstrate, they go to jail and they continue their struggle, often enough out of the country. But this is not a one-dimensional society that you can see, all of them are the same. The vast majority of the people of Iran would belong to the civil society and to the more pragmatic element in Iranian society. But then you have another camp, which is more radical, extremist, whatever, which have, unfortunately, actual power in the hand. All the nice things that I can say about the reformists in Iran, the basic point is they don't have any share in making politics. Khatami was 8 years president of Iran. He wished to improve relations with the United States. He could not, because in Iran, all power is in the hand of the supreme leader. In Iran, the president is only president. He's not the head of the state. He's, at best, he's prime minister under presidential system. So, and these conservatives, extremists, they have few elements of power. One, they claim to speak in the name of God. They know exactly what is the will of God, and they wake up in the morning and tell the people what is the truth. And the truth is only the one thing that they believe or they understand. It carries a weight in traditional societies. Well, we have some rabbis in Israel. We similarly think that they know exactly what is the right thing to do, because they know I don't know how they find out what is the true will of God, but they have their ways. In an era of modern technology, there are ways to send messages from one to another. So the speaking in the name of God is powerful. Now, if this is not enough, God forbid, it should be enough, but it's not. They have the revolutionary guards and the military. So if you are a revolution, you're going on the way that God ordered you, the right path, and then you have the support of the military. What else you possibly can wish for? Well, there is another thing of which they have plenty. The will to fight for their power. And this is something that the Islamic regime has. These ayatollahs did not come to take power after so many years to give up power voluntarily. And in 2009, when they were confronted with young people demonstrating against them, one of them said publicly, "We are not going to let these students to do to us what we did to the Shah in 1979. They learned the lesson of history, of their own history. And they are now teaching it to Bashar al-Assad." I didn't forget I have also to come to the Middle East, so it's the first hint to go into it. And the only country that really supports al-Assad is Iran. But here we speak about the lesson that they learned from the revolution. Now, I could have gone on and on this, but let me tell you one sentence that can maybe tells the whole story. In 1999, students were demonstrating against the Iranian government, supporting Khatami, basically. They're fighting for freedom. And at that time, when the military was suppressing this movement, Ayatollah, one of the leading Ayatollahs in Iran, Ayatollah Misbah Yazdi, who was said to be the mentor of Ahmadinejad, on a Friday sermon, publicly, live on television, he says the following sentence, and you can go and check. He says that whoever thinks that Islam is religion of mercy does not understand the meaning of Islam. This is in itself blasphemy. For a religion that begins and ends with Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, in the name of God the Merciful. To say that Islam is not a religion of mercy, this is not Islamic. But then it goes on to say, Islam orders to us to take sharp sword and cut the heads and the tongues of people who act or speak against us. We are the revolution. We are Islam. Whoever is against us, this is his destiny. So this is another element of strength. Another, if you want, element of strength of these more radicals is that there is no opposition. Well, there are oppositions, but often enough they hate each other more than they hate the regime in Tehran. I don't see a cohesive alternative ideology. I don't see here organization. Some people say that they should also have a leadership. I doubt it, because in such movement you don't see the leadership. With leadership would emerge. Because if I see the leadership, the Islamic regime will see the leadership, and then no one will see the leader. So I don't expect to see the leader ahead of time. But organization and ideology and some cooperation between different segments does not exist. And many people ask why there is no Arab Spring. Well, the simplest answer is that because Iran is not an Arab country, so there cannot be Arab Spring in Iran. But it's deeper than this. Let me tell you, I think that there's the country that started with the Arab Spring is Iran. The copyright of this phenomenon of the Arab Spring was made in Tehran. In the last 130 years, the young people of Iran are in the streets demonstrating, going to movements and changing policy of Iran more than all the Arab countries together have done in their history. Iran is the only country that had constitutional revolution in 1906, made by the people. Iran is the only country that had two big revolutions in 1 century. In 1906, constitutional, 1979, Islamic, made by the people. They had Mossadegh in between, in 1951-53. The first mass movement was in Iran was in 1889. You call it the tobacco movement, when the Shah gave rights, concession to the British government, to British company to raise and sell tobacco, and it was against it was a coalition of clerics who are also landlords, bazaar merchants, and they had one Ayatollah issuing a fatwa, one sentence, stating that because the tobacco goes through the hands of the infidels, tobacco is religiously unclean and tobacco is forbidden. My dear friends, within days, no one in Iran smokes cigarettes, certainly not in public. And yes, those of you who smoke know how difficult it is to quit by an order, an advice, fatwa of an Ayatollah. And the rationale is interesting because non-Muslims are ritually unclean, and because in theory the tobacco moved through the hands of the Brits, the tobacco became unclean, and therefore smoking is not allowed. And this type of popular movements are known in Iran. They are not known in other parts of the Muslim world, or are not other parts of the Arab Middle East. Then Iran had the argument in Iran is no doubt that the Arab Spring was influenced by Iran. The only question is, from what they have been influenced. The conservatives say that this was the impact of the 1979 revolution of Khomeini. The reformists say this is the impact of the 2009 movement when young people went to the streets after the elections in Iran. I think that there is a truth in both of them. Because if you look at the dates, in 2009, the young people of Iran went to the streets. I remember at that time, I was sitting in one of these track 2 meetings with some friends from Egypt, and they were speaking about the movement in Iran. And an Egyptian woman said at that time, "Mashallah, mashallah, praise be to God. When is Egypt going to have such a movement?" I met her a year after and said, "Well, you have been successful faster than you imagined." She said, "Yes, we surprised ourselves." Now, does it mean that they were influenced by Iran? They were influenced by the hardships at home, by the difficulties. And of course, the Iranian youth going to the streets may have somehow helped. And Iran is facing elections. I don't expect the elections to be free. They have never been free in Iran. I remember in 2009, when they went to elections and Ahmadinejad was elected, if that's the right word to use. I was the night of the election. I was in the studio, interviewed by the BBC from the Tel Aviv studio, and then at the end of the interview, it was just when the polling stations were closed. I was asked, "When do you think that we will have the final results?" I told them, "Well, it's 75 million people country. The voting is not electronic; it's manual. It may take a few days or a few hours at least. Tomorrow morning we may know if it's not too close to call." Well, I was wrong. Driving home, 1 hour later, I heard the final results. So for me, I cannot be convinced that this is they've waited to count. You go and check on your, today everything is easy to check when the final results were announced. Well, they were not announced as the final result, they was announced as the results, and they were later on when they continued counting and counting, this was basically what happened to be the truth. So I heard that there is a new area of studies at Tehran University, in Iranian universities. They call it election engineering. No, that's not my. I heard it from Iranians. They said they know probably the results before the elections, because the elections are not free. Even if you dismiss what I said now, because in Iran, to be a candidate to the presidency, you have to be approved by a committee of 12 people. Of guardians. They are half of them directly and half of them indirectly nominated by the supreme leader, Khamenei. And the decision, this committee has the right to disapprove candidates. If you have 2,000 candidates, you may end up, we have 3, 4, the maximum I think until now was 8 or 12 in all the elections that they had. So this screening committee would basically make already the election and giving the people a list of 4 people to choose who is the first, the second. Still, surprises happen also in Iran, like Khatami was a surprise. Ahmadinejad was not a surprise because they didn't want the other, Rafsanjani, and they didn't know who is Ahmadinejad. And Ahmadinejad, for example, did not say a word about Israel or hatred towards the United States. We didn't mention the Holocaust before he was elected. Only after, to strengthen his position in the government, he used this kind of extremism, and it helped him. And I tell you, for me, he is one of the people that is more dangerous than the others, not because he's the president, because of his apocalyptical vision and attitudes. As much as he hates America, he never missed an opportunity to come to New York City, and he can do it only once a year in the General Assembly of the UN. And he has visited every year since 2005 when he was elected first. And when he came in 2005, he gave his speech in the General Assembly. He went back home and he said something that when I was told what he said, I didn't believe. I didn't think it's possible. And then I went to the YouTube and I found, and I urge you to go, and today everything you can find on, you don't even need me here. You can find everything said. And then he was sitting on the floor with an Ayatollah, and he was telling him his impressions from the speech in the UN, and he said that while I was speaking in the General Assembly in the UN, for 27 minutes of my talk, no one even, there was no noise, no talk, no one, all the eyes were glued to me. And this is because, he said, I was told, but I sensed it also myself, there was an aura of light above my head with God protection. This is not a joke. I think such a leader who speaks like this should not get access to nuclear weapon. These are the people that whom I am afraid in history, who believe that they have vision and mission and God protection and light. Well, there's no light here. Okay, I'm safe. So he belongs to this group, and one of these reasons of his confrontation with Khamenei, because these people believe that the Imam, the Messiah, that is supposed to come at the best of time or the worst of time, at the end of time, is about to come. And if he comes, we don't need Khamenei. Why Khamenei is so upset? Because basically what Ahmadinejad says that soon enough the Imam is coming, and therefore we don't need the assistant of the Imam to rule over us. We can directly come to the Imam. And that's why whenever Ahmadinejad goes abroad, one of his assistants is going to jail. The last time was when he went to Egypt. Because there is a fear of this messianic, apocalyptical group that I don't think they have the majority in Iran or the wide support, but there are few such people that raising these issues. To move here from the Middle East and the United States, I can have like 15 minutes or? Yes. It's, I will go back to domestic issues. The Islamic regime, unlike what people say, it's by and large pragmatic. Now, pragmatism does not mean moderation. Pragmatism means that they calculate the price that they have to pay. And if the price is very heavy, they will change their policy. A few months ago, the Canadian government cut diplomatic relations with Iran. Had another 10 European countries joined, or Japan, Australia, and others, this could have been a major pressure on Iran to force them to change. Not that Canada in itself is not significant, but I think that you need to feel the pressure much more than they felt until now. But whenever there was a conflict between national interest and the ideology of the revolution, in ideological revolutionary Iran, interest won over ideology. What it takes is it takes a leader capable of making painful decisions. And there is a difference between Khamenei and Khomeini. The change of policy that is required from Iran today, or the West is expecting from Iran today, is in the magnitude of a change of policy that Khomeini adopted in July 1988, after 8 years of war with Iraq, in which he said, war until victory. We are not going to sign agreement with Saddam Hussein. One day, he went to television, looked at the face of the people and told them the following sentence: "My dear children, it would have been sweeter for me to drink poison than signing an agreement with Saddam Hussein, but we don't have a choice." Is Khamenei capable of making such decisions? I doubt. Because Khamenei doesn't have the religious standing and position and power of Khomeini. He doesn't have the political power. He doesn't have the personal charisma. But I think what is required from him is to come to this stage, that understanding that if it doesn't change, it can be much worse. Maybe he will surprise me. I'll be the first to be happy if I'm surprised and Khamenei is capable of making such a change, a policy change. I want to speak first about the Middle East, but speak about the United States very briefly. You know, they go to the streets and they say, death to America, death to America. But if you want to be very rich in Iran, all that you have to do is to open a small office and sell visa to the United States. You will be millionaires. So there is no among the people such hatred towards the United States. But the Islamic regime has made United States such a big gorilla that it's very difficult to retreat now. More than that, because they have withdrawn from so many ideological principles, if you are a revolution and you have withdrawn from so many things and you have two major issues in head, hatred towards the United States, animosity towards the Israel, what would wisdom dictate? To put this flag down or to raise them higher? If I was the head of revolution, I would have raised it higher, to show that the revolution is still alive. If Khamenei retreats from this animosity to the United States, the Islamic Revolution, I don't want to say there will be no Islamic Revolution, it will be a different Islamic Revolution. And I think that Khamenei is fully aware that he cannot make such a retreat from such a basic principle. So, there is another thing about the United States. If the Iranians are sincere, and they will ask themselves, which is the country that has made the greatest services to the national interest of Iran, or the strategic interest of Iran, I think they should come to the conclusion this is the United States of America. America has gone after Saddam Hussein in 1991, destroyed his military power. Saddam Hussein, the enemy number one of Iran, with whom they had fought war for 8 years, with many more people killed in this war than all the people, Jews and Arabs, killed in 100 years of conflict between the Zionist movement and the Arab world. Then the American went in 2002 to Afghanistan to remove the enemy number 2 of Iran. On both sides of Iran, Americans removed their main enemies. 2003, they went to the other side again, to Iraq, to remove, finally, Saddam Hussein and bring to his execution. Execution or killing or whatever. No, he was put on trial and then, yes. How fast you forget these basic things. So I think that it also means that at the end of the day, there are some common basic interests between Iran and the United States. If you ask me if really necessarily Israel is the enemy number 1 of Iran, I doubt it. I don't think that the Iranian people wake up in the morning and they ask themselves, what can I do today to destroy the Jewish state of Israel? I don't think so. Maybe I'm, I don't know, overly optimistic or naive. I think the Iranian people wake up in the morning and they ask themselves, how can I feed my children and give them better education and better health? Israel is a remote country for most Iranians. But the Islamic regime has made Israel as a symbol. Israel is a convenient enemy. Because if you want to divert public opinion from domestic problems, you need to have enemy far away from your borders. By the way, towards their immediate neighborhood, they are very, very pragmatic. There was a war in Nagorno-Karabakh in the early 90s, where Christian Azerbaijanis, where Christians, Armenians were fighting with Shiite Azeris, which means not only Muslim, but Shiites, that their cup of tea, their friends. Whom did Iran support? They supported the Christians fighting against Shiites. Where is the ideology? Did they support the Kurds in Iraq? No, because Iran doesn't have an interest in having an independent Kurdish state in Iraq. Because tomorrow, the millions of Kurds in Iran would also like to have independence. If there is one thing in common that Turkey, Iran, and Iraq has, is this animosity towards the Kurdish aspiration for independence or autonomy. But again, Israel has become the number 1 enemy in the eyes of the Islamic Revolution, and they continue with it. There is a phrase in Persian, is that a low wall that you can step on it. I think they are using us. They are raising the issue of Israel, the name of Israel, for their own domestic purposes. And sometimes I had also the impression that some of our politicians in Israel are using the name of Iran too often because it's convenient. Now, when it comes to the Middle East, today we see that there is I think, dramatic change. Usually we used to say until a few years ago that there are 3 big military powers in the Middle East: Iran, Turkey and Israel, and none of them is Arab. Today I think after the Arab Spring, no matter how much they are incapable of solving the domestic problems, I think Egypt is back to the politics of the Middle East. And the competition today in the Muslim world is between Egypt, Iran and Turkey on the leadership of the Muslim world. And the rivalry between them is really very serious. Certainly, the 3 of them represent different understanding of Islam and Islamic Revolution. The 3 of them are Islamic. The Turkish government today is more Islamic than it has been since Ataturk. And Egypt with the Muslim Brothers, Iran with this Islamic Revolution, but they have different understandings of Islam. It goes back to what I started saying, that there is no one understanding of Islam. I told you about Ayatollahs going to jail. But so there are different interpretations, but this disagreement between them is a major issue. And I think that in this case, Turkey and Egypt have more in common than each of them and Iran. And Iran today is in a very weak position. which is a starting point, hopefully, for change. A word about, and I'll end with this, about the nuclear issue, because whenever you speak about Iran, you somehow expected to say a few words about it, but I'm trying to avoid, but I'll make it very, very briefly. There are 2 points that I wanted to share with you. One is that I have a very bad feeling wherever I travel in the world, meeting with officials and meeting with faculty and students and journalists and everyone asking the question, when Israel is going to attack, when Israel is going to do A, B, or C. And I'm offended by this, because it assumes that the problem of Iran is the exclusive problem of Israel. And this is not true. This is not true, because the problem of Iran is also the problem of Israel. But it's first and foremost the problem of the Western civilization, of the Middle East, also of Israel. And then when I read in newspaper some time ago that Saudi Arabia is considering to allow Israel to use its airspace to go and attack Iran, I was really offended. Why you have to give us your airspace? Go and do it yourself. You are next door. So I think this is something that for me is unacceptable, that everyone sits and thinks, well, this is the problem of Israel, which necessarily should have a solution with a trademark made in Israel. I think that what I said was clear enough. I don't want to go further with it. I think that don't think that it's only the question of Israel. Well, I know part of the reason that everyone thinks it's the problem of Israel is because Israel speaks so much about Iran. But here is the Israeli dilemma. If Israel speaks about Iran, you will think that it's an Israeli problem. If Israel doesn't speak about Iran, you will forget it. Not that I am happy with all the terms and terminology and statements made in Israel. I think it should have been much better to be more quieter and not to be so vocal. I'll tell you, even an innocent statement like Iran is an existential threat. I'm coming from Washington with this AIPAC conference yesterday, and Joe Biden spoke there and spoke also about this Iran being existential threat. I don't like this term, because it sends a wrong message to two sides. First, it sends a wrong message to the Iranians. If Israelis say that Iran is an existential threat, they can interpret it that we are afraid from Iran, and that's the only problem that we have in life. Tomorrow they can destroy us. I don't think this is the case. And when I was asking Israel, so what you would say, I said, my answer is very clear. I would say Israel is indestructible. That's the message that Israeli politicians would give to the Iranians. Then there is a wrong message to my children. 4 years ago, I conducted a survey, and it's available on the net, everything that on the results of this survey. And one of the questions was, what would you do if Iran is going nuclear? We have the bomb, the weapon. 1 out of every 4 Israelis say that if Iran will have the bomb, they will consider seriously to leave the country. This is what we want. So the more you speak about it like this, it's really making the problem even worse. And we should, the slogan of the Mossad, it's also on the internet. Today everything, even the head of the Mossad, everything was secret in Israel some time ago. It comes from the Old Testament. It says you should conduct your works cunningly. There are some Israeli students say, "Betachbulot ta'aseh lecha milchama." I think that the problem is that we are not cunning and shrewd anymore. In 1967, when Hassanin Haikal, the closest person to President Nasser of Egypt, was asked a simple question: what is the cause of the collapse of the Arab armies in 6 days or maybe 6 hours? You know what he answered? Well, I like this answer. I remember it from at that time. He said that while we, the Arabs, were playing backgammon, the Israelis were playing chess. Both games are well known to Iranian, and they have been probably originated in Iran, both backgammon and chess. The point is that the Iranians have today tend to be playing chess, and the Western civilization and the Western world is playing backgammon. You're throwing the dice and praying to God that everything will be okay. Learn politics from them. The combination of bazaar merchants and clerics makes good politicians. Here too, we had some of them in Israel, so it's not a secret for us. And finally, so about Iran, I think that what worries me is Iran will be nuclear. They may have the right to have nuclear power for civil purposes, civilian purposes. But what worries me is the combination of nuclear weapon with such a radical ideology. This combination is really difficult to accept. What can be done? I think that it's a lot that can be done short of military action, and I hope very much that we will not get to the day of military action. 3-4 years ago, I invited to the Center of Iranian Studies at Tel Aviv University. I had a session on the military option, how valid it is. I brought a former chief of Air Force and the former chief of the Army Intelligence, and each of them spoke. I came back home. My wife asked me, so what is the message? What did they say? I told her today I learned that there is no military option. When I heard the two generals speaking, how difficult it is for Israel, I don't think it's going to be a picnic. I don't think it's going to be easy. Israel will have to do something, but I think that even for Israel it's better that this issue would be resolved peacefully. And the only people who can solve this problem are the people of Iran. And I think that what I see in Iran is that there are two trends in motion already. I often say two trains that left the terminal. One train is carrying the message of political change, and one train is carrying the message of nuclear Iran. From what I see right now, the train with a nuclear weapon is driving faster than the train with political change. The problem that we have, we know that Iranians are suffering, Iranians are eager to have change. The problem is that when it comes to popular movement, we can never predict. I'm a student of history. I know that in history, no mass movements, big revolutionary movement could have been predicted. We didn't predict the French Revolution, the Russian Revolution of the early century, last century. We didn't predict the fall of the Soviet Union, which is not a big mass movement. We didn't predict Mubarak fall, Islamic Revolution. Why would we say able to predict when is these people would one day march and start changing history? I know that when this happens, all of our colleagues in university, mainly political scientists, and forgive me, my friends from political science, they will say, well, of course we knew, the signs were on the wall. I don't think it's true. No one knows what makes people one day wake up and start marching. I think what this lesson from it is that you have to face Iran with growing difficulties, and to make them choose themselves to postpone the nuclear program for some time. I don't think that we should be concerned about the type of regime that the Iranians will have. I don't want the Iranians to tell me what kind of political system I would have, although they cannot be worse than what we have actually, so it doesn't really matter if they give us advice what to do or not to do. We can go worse than this. Bibi Netanyahu said yesterday, I don't know if you saw him appearing in AIPAC in video conference, he looks so sad and gloomy. He really suffers with this political system that we have, and he appealed to the people in AIPAC, in the American people, don't ever try to implement our political system. So this is a topic for some other lecture. But it's where I was, I don't know, I went to Bibi already. I think that what I'm trying to say that the Iranians should be brought to make the choice, because no one is against the regime in Iran. I don't care what kind of regime they will have. They can have Islamic Republic, they can have monarchy, they can have liberal democracy, whatever. It's their decision. I care about the policy of this regime, not about the type of this regime. And I think that in the case of Iran, the decision is entirely in the hands of the Iranian people, the civil society in Iran, the young students of Iran. See how many millions of students they now have, and look at them, what they are achieving in different parts, in different arts in the world. So I can only hope that for the sake of themselves and the neighborhood, they will make the right decisions to, if they want to keep this regime, keep this regime. If you want to have nuclear capabilities, it's okay, but not now. Why should you do it right now? And all the world is asking them is to postpone for a few years the nuclear program, because currently the combination of such a radical ideology holding in other hand nuclear weapon is difficult to digest. Thank you.